So picture this. It's 689 BCE, and the Assyrian king Sennacherib is standing outside Babylon, this incredibly ancient, sacred city. And he's absolutely furious. He doesn't just want to conquer it, he wants it gone. So what does he do? His soldiers tear down the walls, brick by brick. They smash every temple they can find. And then, and this is insane, he diverts an entire river to flood what's left. He literally wanted to turn one of humanity's oldest cities into a swamp. You'd think that's the end of the story, right? Assyria wins, Babylon's done. But no, not even close. What Sennacherib didn't realize was that he'd just poured gasoline on a fire that had been burning for centuries. Because this was just one brutal chapter in the most savage, personal, utterly ruthless rivalry the ancient world ever saw. For over 300 years, Assyria and Babylon went at each other's throats. This wasn't some boring dispute over trade routes. This was deeply personal. It was about honor, revenge, and who got to call themselves the true power of Mesopotamia. And here's the crazy part. The empire that seemed unstoppable, the one doing all the destroying, they'd be the ones completely wiped off the map. This is Assyria versus Babylon, the most brutal feud in ancient history. And trust me, it gets wild. All right, so to get why these two civilizations despised each other so much, we need to set the scene. You've got Mesopotamia, basically modern-day Iraq, sitting between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is literally where civilization started. First cities, first writing, first empires, all here. And smack in the middle of this region, you've got two completely different cultures competing for dominance. Down south, there's Babylon. Think old money, ancient prestige. This city had been important for like 1,000 years already. Hammurabi, one of history's first lawmakers. Babylonian. The city was the cultural and religious center of the entire region. Controlling Babylon was like holding the throne in Game of Thrones. It gave you legitimacy that brute force alone never could. Then, up north, you've got Assyria. And if Babylon was the sophisticated scholar, Assyria was the guy who solves every problem with violence. They built their entire identity around being scary good at war. Their kings would literally carve inscriptions bragging about how many cities they burned and how many people they impaled. They weren't subtle. Now here's where it gets messy. Both of these empires thought they should be running Mesopotamia. Babylon's like, we're the cultural center. We've got the ancient legacy. Everyone respects us. Assyria's like, yeah, but we've got the biggest army, so... And that tension? That's the match that lit the fuse. For centuries, it's this repeating cycle. Assyria conquers Babylon, installs some puppet king, takes tribute. Then Babylon rebels. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. But every cycle makes both sides angrier, more resentful, more brutal. Until finally, in the 8th century BCE, Assyria decides they're done playing nice. They're gonna solve this Babylon problem permanently. Spoiler alert, that doesn't go how they planned. So by the 8th century BCE, Assyria's not just powerful, they're terrifying. Like, genuinely the most advanced military force anyone's ever seen. You've got Tiglath-Pileser III, who basically invents the playbook for running an empire. His strategy? Make conquest so brutal, so complete, that no one even thinks about rebelling. Deport entire populations. Put Assyrian governors everywhere. Make examples so horrific that other cities just surrender. And it works. Assyria goes from regional power to this massive empire stretching from Egypt to the Persian Gulf. But Babylon? Babylon's still being Babylon, rebelling, conspiring with Assyria's enemies, acting like they're too important to be pushed around. And here's what's fascinating. Assyrian kings have this weird love-hate thing with Babylon. Like, they'll conquer the city, and then immediately claim the title King of Babylon, because they know it makes them look legitimate. They want Babylon's prestige while simultaneously being furious that they need it. It's like conquering your rival and then desperately needing them to say you're cool. Super dysfunctional. Then we get to Sennacherib, and this guy takes it to another level. 703 BCE, Babylon rebels again. Sennacherib crushes them, but they rebel again and again. And at some point, for Sennacherib, this stops being about politics. This is personal now. This is about respect. So, in 689 BCE, he completely loses it. He marches his army to Babylon and does something that shocks the entire ancient world. He doesn't just conquer it. He tries to delete it from existence. His soldiers demolish the temples, including Marduk's temple, which is like destroying the Vatican. They tear down the walls, burn the palaces. Then Sennacherib orders engineers to divert the Euphrates River to literally flood the ruins. And he brags about it. In his inscriptions he writes, "I made its destruction more complete than by a flood." Think about how extreme that is. Babylon wasn't just any city. It had been revered for over 1,000 years, and Sennacherib's treating it like it's nothing, like it deserves to be erased. For a minute, it looks like Assyria's won. Totally, decisively, game over. But you know what they say about revenge, right? Here's the thing about destroying someone's most sacred city and flooding it like it's trash. They don't forget. Ever. So, for decades, Babylon's sitting there, partially rebuilt by the Assyrians themselves, because even they realize they need the city's legitimacy. But the people? Oh, they're angry, they're patient, and they're waiting. 626 BCE. A Chaldean leader named Nabopolassar sees his moment. Assyria's in trouble. They've conquered too much, made too many enemies, stretched their armies too thin. The empire's got cracks showing. And Nabopolassar's like, all right, it's time. But he's not stupid. He knows Babylon alone can't take down Assyria. So he makes this brilliant alliance with the Medes, this rising power from what's now Iran. And together, they're unstoppable. 612 BCE. They march on Nineveh, Assyria's capital. Their crown jewel? Now, remember what Sennacherib did to Babylon 77 years earlier? What goes around comes around. They besiege Nineveh for 3 months. When the walls finally break, it's absolute carnage. The city's looted, burned, destroyed so completely that centuries later, people literally forgot where it used to be. Greek historians were like, Nineveh, never heard of it. The Assyrian king dies in his burning palace, and the empire, this terrifying military machine that dominated the ancient world for centuries, just vanishes. Not defeated, not diminished, erased. This wasn't just revenge. This was biblical-level payback. Babylon had been humiliated, and now they'd made sure Assyria would never humiliate anyone again. The cycle was complete. Assyria destroyed Babylon. Babylon destroyed Assyria. But Babylon wasn't done yet. Enter Nebuchadnezzar II, Nabopolassar's son. And this guy doesn't just want revenge. He wants the world to know Babylon is back. He takes one look at what's left of his city and decides to build something so magnificent, so over-the-top spectacular, that everyone will know. Babylon won. Remember, a century ago, Sennacherib tried to turn this place into a swamp. Now Nebuchadnezzar's building the most jaw-dropping city anyone's ever seen. He builds walls so massive that ancient writers said you could race chariots on top of them. He constructs the Ishtar Gate, this incredible structure covered in brilliant blue tiles with golden lions and dragons. You could see it from miles away, and it screamed power. Then there's the Hanging Gardens. The terraced gardens so lush and green in the middle of the desert that they became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Like, imagine building something so extra that people are still talking about it thousands of years later. And the Temple of Marduk, the exact same temple Sennacherib destroyed, Nebuchadnezzar rebuilds it bigger, grander, more impressive than ever. But he's not just building, he's conquering. He defeats Egypt, he conquers Jerusalem twice, and brings the Jewish elite back to Babylon as captives. His empire stretches from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. Babylon's not just back, they're the superpower. Think about that reversal. Assyria tried to erase Babylon to prove their dominance. Within a century, Assyria's literally forgotten, and Babylon's the crown jewel of the world. If that's not the ultimate comeback story, I don't know what is. But here's the thing about peaks. There's only one direction to go from the top. So what made this feud so uniquely vicious? It wasn't just about land or money. This was deeper. This was cultural, religious, identity-level warfare. When Sennacherib destroyed Babylon's temples, he wasn't just knocking down buildings, he was attacking their gods, their history, their entire sense of who they were. When Babylon obliterated Nineveh, they weren't just winning a battle, they were erasing Assyria's existence from history. Both sides went all in with a totality that's honestly terrifying. They didn't just want to beat each other, they wanted humiliation, erasure, total victory. And you know what? They both got exactly what they wanted. Assyria was destroyed so completely that for over 2,000 years, people thought their empire was just a myth from the Bible. It wasn't until the 1800s when archaeologists dug up Nineveh that people were like, oh wow, this was actually real. But Babylon, for all of Nebuchadnezzar's glory, for all those incredible buildings and conquests, the Neo-Babylonian Empire lasted less than a century after he died. The Persians conquered them in 539 BCE. Alexander the Great took the city in 331 BCE. Eventually, people just left, and the desert swallowed it whole. Today, archaeologists dig through these sites and find the evidence everywhere. Burn layers in Nineveh showing the devastation. Flood damage in Babylon from Sennacherib's revenge. Inscriptions where kings brag about atrocities like they're proud of it. The scars are still there, thousands of years later. So what's the takeaway from all this? Maybe it's that revenge, no matter how satisfying, doesn't actually save you. Babylon got their payback, totally, completely, devastatingly. And it didn't matter. Both empires are dust now. Or maybe it's about how dangerous pride and humiliation are as forces in history. When you destroy not just someone's city, but their identity, their sacred places, their sense of self, you create wounds that fester, that demand retribution, that never really heal. This feud lasted centuries and consumed two of the greatest civilizations in human history. And in the end, neither side won. They just destroyed each other. And honestly, that might be the most tragic part of this whole story. All that power, all that culture, all those centuries of achievement, gone. Not because they weren't strong enough or smart enough, but because they couldn't let go of the hate.